Hello, class. Good to be with you again. Hope you're doing well. I hope you had a wonderful Easter and would love to celebrate with you in person if we had that opportunity, but of course we don't, but we can still do it through this medium. So anyway, very thankful. I know that we have a lot to be thankful for in this season, and the fact that Jesus Christ came and he suffered and died and was raised again to give us life gives us great hope. And with that, I rejoice. I'm going to give just a couple of announcements because you're actually watching this video for Wednesday's lesson, which would be the 15th of April. So Tuesday, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, and your parents probably got an email from me and were able to work through that. It was more of a review for math. You had a couple other things to do for Tuesday. But let me just walk through the lesson plan so that you're set up for today, and then we'll go into our math lesson. So today, because we only have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you only have one multiplication timesheet to do for the week. So please make sure you complete that. Again, the vision for this is just so that we can continue to grow in our mastery, so that we can do math much easier and much better. So please do that, and then we're going to go through our math lesson for today and also for tomorrow. And as a reminder, please keep doing MobyMax on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you have not finished all 4 operations for fact fluency, that is your first priority. Once you have finished those first 4 operations, then you transition to doing a placement test. And if you finish the placement test, then it would find the areas that you need help. And so then once you've completed both of those things, which is the placement test and those 4 operations, then you're free to work on math once a week and then go back and do some fact fluency once a week. And that should be a review of all 4 operations so that you can continue to work on those math facts as well as learn new concepts that you should be working on. Okay. For science, we're going to transition to weathering and erosion. And so I have a couple videos, one for this week and one for next week, that I'll send in the lesson plans that you can watch. You're always open to using your own supplemental materials at home. You may have some reading that you may want to do, and you're welcome to do that. At the end of this month, the end of April, we're just going to write a summary of 5 sentences of what you've learned about rocks during this time. So you may want to write a sentence or 2 at the end of this week or next week, just so that it's still fresh in your mind and you can still write that. First language lessons, you don't have to hand those in. Just keep working on those. Make sure that you're understanding what we're doing, though. If there are any questions after going through those lessons with mom or dad, make sure you ask questions. We're going to dictate N6, your new list. And so these words are getting harder, aren't they? So you may need some extra practice, and that may mean an extra practice quiz or something like that, just to make sure that you really get it. Continue working on Secret Garden as directed. Make sure you're reading on Tuesdays and Thursdays on your own for 20 to 30 minutes. In fact, I would encourage you to read Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays on your own, because really reading enables you, and practicing reading enables you to be a better reader. So keep up the good work. And then for Latin, you're just doing chapter 28 for these next 2 weeks at the pace whatever mom or dad decides for you. Let's go ahead and pray and we'll start. God, thank you so much for your goodness and your grace in our lives. Thank you that we still get to do school together in some ways by doing it through video. And that's a gift of you. And so, God, I just pray that you would help us to focus today, that whether this is easy to understand or difficult to understand, that we would commit it to you, trusting you for the fruitfulness that you want. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so I have 2 different areas I'm going to talk to you about today. We're still going through fractions, but the 2 areas I'm going to talk about are equivalent fractions using division, and we're also going to talk about simplest form, okay? So before we move to simplest form, I'm just going to work on this first one written in purple, which is equivalent fractions and division. Last week, you worked on equivalent fractions using multiplication. So we're going to see some mirroring or some similarities between the two. And so hopefully, if you understood last week, that will help lay a foundation so that this week you'll understand this concept somewhat more easily. So here's my little fraction bar. I think we did this a while back, but I want to show this to you again. I have this divided up into 8 different boxes, and I have 4 of those 8 colored in. So I have a total of 4/8 shaded in. Now, of course, if I were to divide this in half and only have 2 pieces, I also have 1/2 shaded in. So I have 4/8 equal to 1/2. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to try to move you a little closer. Take a look. Remember how last week when we were moving from fractions like this, 1/2, and we had to figure out things, and we didn't know maybe the numerator or the denominator. For this example, I'm not going to know the numerator. What we would have to do is figure out what we multiplied down here, and then we would have to multiply the same up here for the numerator. Remember, this is the denominator and the numerator. Whatever you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So we figured out that 2 times 4 gave us 8. So 1 times 4 equals 4/8. Similarly, we have 4/8 equals 1/2. Now, we just reversed it, didn't we? Instead of saying 1/2 equals 4/8, we're saying 4/8 is equal to 1/2. What we did, instead of multiplying by 4, we divided by 4. Okay? Let's talk through this one just a little bit more. I mentioned to your parents that, okay, no, hold on. I'm not going to do that quite yet. Let's make sure that we have our textbooks ready. And I did mention to your parents, I'm going to mention it now, that this may be helpful. This is in the back, or this was in the back of my teacher's book, and so I made copies and sent them. You're welcome to follow along and just watch me do this, but mom or dad may have printed it off for you also. We're going to get to this in a minute. But what I would like you to have is your textbook ready to go. So if you would, please turn to page 73. Okay? Now, looking back at 72, you see that we went through this last week, remember? We moved and we had to figure out what we were multiplying by to get those numerators and those denominators. Today is going to be a little different, okay? Let's take a look at page 73, number 4. All right, can you all get there? Okay, what are the missing numerators and denominators? So here we have a fraction, and they show us how much has been shaded in. They say 8/12 has been shaded in. All right. Well, now we have to figure out the numerator knowing that the denominator is 6. Okay, based on what we learned just from my previous example, we have to ask ourselves, what did we divide by in order to get 6? So I'm going to write this part on the board. I have a total of 8/12, but now I want to know how many 6ths that is worth. Now, I know that they have a picture here, and you can count, and you'll see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 6ths. But what I want to do is show you what we are doing. And what we are doing is we're dividing by 2. So 8 divided by 2, what we do to the denominator, we must do to the numerator. 8 divided by 2 gives you 4 6ths. Now take it a little bit further. Now we have another picture, and we have 2 parts shaded, but we don't know the denominator. Well, now you know because they have the picture, and you know that there's a total of 3 parts. So it would be 2/3 that are shaded in. But let's say the picture wasn't there. How did we figure out that? This we don't know, so I'm going to make that a little box. 8 divided by what would give me 2? 4. So what I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. 12 divided by 4 gives me what? 2/3. Now, as you can see, they wrote that out for you right down here, but we just did that on the board, okay? Before we move on, though, I'm going to look at my notes here, and what I want to do is show you this problem right here. And I filled in some of the numbers for you. And if you are wanting to do this on your own, which would be great, and you're welcome to do so, you would have to fill in some of the numbers. I made mine colored by coloring it in with orange. Yours will probably show up gray. But let's take a look. If you can see, we just did this together on the board. And this was actually number 4 in your textbook also. But let's take a look at this one. We have 4 out of 10 parts colored. Okay, now they're showing us that we have 2 out of 5 parts colored. And I want to know, do you think those are equal or equivalent? Well, let's check and let's see what we divided to get each of those parts. And you may be able to tell just by looking that they had 4 parts and then they combined those 2 equal parts twice to give you 2 parts. But let's go ahead and just show you 4/10 and 2/5. So in order to get to that, what did we divide by? We divided by 2, and what we do to the numerator, we do to the denominator, and that will give us 2/5. And as you can see, if you look on the sheet, 4/10 is equal to 2/5. It's the same amount of space. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is work through number 5 together. Okay, so we're still on page 73, but let's go ahead and go through those together. So A is 8/10 is equal to how many fifths? Okay, for me to have 10, I needed to get to 5. What did I divide by? 10 divided by what gives me 5? 2. What I do to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. So now I'm going to divide that by 2. What is 8 divided by 2? 4/5. Okay, let's move on to B. I have 4/8. And now I have some halves to work with. 8 divided by what gives me 2? 4. What I do to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. 4 divided by 4 gives me 1. That's right. Let's now transition to C. I have 6/9, but I want to know how many thirds. All right? So 9 divided by what will give me 3? Divided by 3. What I do to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. What is 6 divided by 3? That's right, 2/3. Now, so far we needed to find the numerators for all of these. Now, if you go through D through F, you'll see we're going to be finding the denominators, which is the same process. So let's go ahead and do that. 6/9 is equal to 2 over what? 6 divided by what gives me 2? It's divided by 3. What we do to the numerator, we need to do to the denominator. So 9 divided by 3 is what? That will be 3. All right. How about, let's transition to E. 9/12 is equal to 3 over what? Well, 9 divided by what gives me 3? Divided by 3. What we do to the numerator, we need to do to the denominator. Let's divide that by 3. What's 12 divided by 3? 4. And let's take a look at F. We have 10/12 equals 5 over what? Well, 10 divided by what gives me 5? Divided by 2. And what I do to the numerator, I need to do to the denominator. So 12 divided by 2 gives me what? 6. Now, I just want to pause for a minute. Did you notice that we're doing multiplication and division in order to get equivalent fractions? We're not adding, we're not subtracting, we're multiplying and dividing because we're working with those equal parts. It's part of fractions, okay? I just want to make that clarification real quick. Now, I'm going to share with you just the workbook exercise that you'll do with this lesson, okay? So if you look at exercise 33, they have the bars and the pictures for you. So they're giving you those starters to kind of help you understand what you're doing. But if you turn the page, the picture isn't there, and you're going to have to start thinking through dividing or multiplying in order to get you these equivalent fractions. Just real quick, equivalent means what again? Equal, right. So I want to just point this out to you. For your example here, it says 2/3 is equal to which fraction? They give you 3/4, 4/6, and 5/10. So I want you to look at each one of these and see, is it equivalent? And of course, they show you that the equivalent fraction is 4/6. Now, as you can tell with this one, you had to multiply by 2 to get to that one. But look at C. We have 4/10, and you want to find what fraction would equal 4/10. Now, we have 2/5, 5/8, and 6/12. 4/10, you can tell 10 is kind of a higher number. And except for 6/12, all of these are less. So you're probably going to be dividing and not multiplying. So I just want to give you a heads up that some of these fractions, you're going to be multiplying like you did last week. And some of these fractions, you're going to be dividing to find the equivalent fractions like you just learned. I just want to give you a heads up, okay? If this feels a little clunky right now, I would encourage you to go back and do number 5 again with mom or dad. Or if the multiplication seems a little clunky, you can go back and do number 3. Here you go, on page 72, and make sure that that's making sense to you, okay? I'm going to transition now because we talked about equivalent fractions with division, but now we're going to talk about something called simplest form. So I'm going to go ahead and erase, and this will be continued on page 73 in your textbook. But before we get there, I'm going to refer to this sheet yet again. Okay. Now, if you look at the first row, all of these, 1, 1, 2 halves, 3/3, and 6/6, they all represent one whole. Look at row 2. We talked about these equivalent fractions, didn't we? 1/3, 2/6, 3/9, and 4/12, right? They're all equal, okay? So all of these are going to be equivalent or equal to 1/3. Let's look at this row. We have 8/12, 4/6, and 2/3. They are all equal or equivalent. They all show us 2/3. They're all, when you combine all of these little pieces, you will find that they are equal to 2/3. Here's my question for you. Can you make this any simpler? Can you combine pieces any more? You can't. Because you can't, this is called simplest form, okay? In this example, 1/3 is your simplest form. You can't divide anymore. In this one, 2/3, that's your simplest form. You can't divide anymore. Look at this fourth row. We have 4/10 and 2/5. And what we just discussed is that these are equivalent, correct? Can you divide 2/5 anymore? Look at the picture. Can you do that anymore? Even in your mind, can you divide 2 and 5 by the same number anymore? You can't. 2/5 is its simplest form. So I have a game, and we're going to call this game, Is It Simplest Form? Here we go. Let me erase this. We're doing simplest form. Here we go. 8/10. Can you divide that anymore? Remember what I said about even numbers? Even numbers are always divisible by 2. So that should give you a clue. Can I divide this? I can. So is it in simplest form? No. If I divide each by 2, what I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. 4/5. Can I divide that anymore by the same number? That's my simplest form. How about this one? I'm going to do little bullet points here. 3/7. Is that in simplest form? Can you divide 3 and 7 by the same number? So good news, it is simplest form. This one wins. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, let's do the next one. 5/15. Can you divide 5 and 15 again by a similar number? You can divide it again. So you could divide them both by 5, can't you? Yeah. 5 divided by 5 would give you 1, and 15 divided by 5 would give you 3 for 1/3. And our last one for simplest form is going to be 8/12. Is that in simplest form? Or can it be divided? It can. We know they're both even numbers, so that is a big clue, right? We know that it's at least divisible by 2. So let's do it. Let's divide each part by 2. The numerator and the denominator. When I divide the numerator by 2, I get 4. When I divide the denominator by 2, I get 6. Okay. Am I in simplest form? What? I'm not in simplest form yet? What? Well, 4 and 6 are even, so guess what? It's not in simplest form. I can divide by 2 again. And get what? 2/3. Can I divide 2/3 anymore? I can't. It's in simplest form. I bet if we were in the classroom, one of you would point out to me, 8/12, yes, that's divided by 2, but some of you may have already caught on that actually 8/12, it could also be divided by 4. Each of those are divisible by 4, aren't they? To give you 2/3. We did the same thing. We just divided by 2 times. Okay? All right, let me erase this. All right, let's go ahead and look in our textbooks, and we are going to go to actually no, before we do that, I want to make sure we get a little bit more practice. So give me a minute here. I'm going to write a few more. Let's keep trying to write equivalent fractions, okay? We know that 1/3, can you divide that anymore? It's already in simplest form, right? But let's find other fractions that equal 1/3. Let's go ahead and start by multiplying by 2, okay? Let's multiply by 2, multiply by 2. What is 1 times 2? 2. What is 3 times 2? 6. Okay, so we have those two that are equivalent. Let's go ahead and this time, let's multiply by 3. I should draw that over here. Let's multiply by 3. What's 1 times 3? 3. What's 3 times 3? 9. Now, let's keep going. Let's do it by 4. What is 3 times 4? What we do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. What's 1 times 4? Look at all these equivalent fractions we're doing. Isn't this fun? All right, times 5. Times 5. What's 1 times 5? Great. And what's 3 times 5? All of these are equivalent fractions, and they all came from this fraction, which is in the simplest form. Should we play this game again? Okay, let me do another fraction. This is really fun. Let's do 2/5. All right, let's go ahead and multiply by 2 and get the next equivalent fraction. 2 times 2 is 4, and 5 times 2 is 10. Now let's multiply by 3. All right, 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 3 is 15. All right, let's do it with 4 now. What we do to the numerator, we do to the denominator. 2 times 4 gives me 8, and 5 times 4 gives me 20. And should we do it one more time by 5? We're going to multiply the numerator by 5 and the denominator by 5. So 2 times 5 gives me 10, and 5 times 5 gives me 25. These are all equivalent fractions coming back to the 2/5, which is the simplest form. Now, I think we're ready to transition and talk a little bit about page 73. And we're going to go through number 6, okay? I'm going to erase this. And number 6 says, complete the following equivalent fractions of 6/12. Well, here I have 6/12, and I have a 3 up here, but I'm missing the denominator. What did I divide to get 3? I divided 6 by what to get 3? I divided by 2. And what I do to the numerator, I need to do to the denominator. 12 divided by 2 gives me, that's right, 3/6. Now, let's take a look at 6/12. This is B. Or no, I guess it's not labeled as B, but it's the next one. 6 divided by what gives me 2? It's 3. So 12 divided by 3 gives me what? 4. All right, and now I have 6/12 is equal to 1 over what? 6 divided by what gives me 1? 6. And what I do to the numerator, I need to do to the denominator. 12 divided by 6 gives me what? 1/2. And there is my simplest form. Because I cannot divide this anymore. Could I divide these two? Yeah, I could divide these two by 2. Could I divide these two? Yeah, I could divide both of these by 3. Can I divide 1 and 2 anymore? That is my simplest form. Now, let's turn the page to 74. We're almost done, and then you'll be free to work on your workbook exercises. This is actually the lesson that's taught on Thursday, so if you need to go back and rewatch this, you're welcome to. But we're going to express each of these in simplest form. I have 2/4. Okay, I need it in simplest form, so what can I divide both numbers by to give me my simplest form? I'm going to divide each by 2. So that will give me 1/2. Okay, let's move on to B. I have 6/8. I need it in simplest form. So what can I divide both of these numbers by? I can divide both by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. See how it's simplest form? I'm sorry, I wrote a 6 there instead of a B. I can't reduce that anymore. Let's do C together. I have 5/10. Okay, what can I divide each of those numbers by to give me a simplest fraction or simplest form? I can divide each by 5 to give me 1/2. And I wish I had more room to do D, so I'm going to have to come over here though. Now I have 3/9. What can I divide each of these by to give me simplest form? I can divide each by 3, giving me 1/3. I'm going to write the next 4 on the board. If you have a piece of paper and a pencil, I want you to see if you can write them down as I write the problems on the board. Okay? So E, F, G, and H we're all going to do. And if you have a paper and a pen or a pencil, I would encourage you to see if you can solve those as I write these problems on the board. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and make these in simplest form. 12 and 4, what can I divide each of those numbers by? Yeah, some of you may have said 2, and that is true, but I'll give you a clue. If you divide each by 2, you're going to be dividing again. In case you want me to show you what that means, let's go ahead and do 4 divided by 2 and 12 divided by 2. What does that give you? 2/6. But the truth is, you can see you can reduce it even more, right? You're not done. You're going to have to keep working to get the simplest form. You would divide by 2 again to give you 1/2. And what I did here is I knew that both 4 could be divided by 4 and 12 could be divided by 4 to give me, oh, I'm sorry, look what I did. 1/3. So 12 divided by 4 is 3 for 1/3. What can I divide each of these numbers by to give me simplest form? I can divide each by 2 to give me 2/3. How about this one, 10/12? What can both of those numbers be divided by to give me simplest form? They're even numbers. can divide both by 2 to give me 5, 6. Can I reduce that anymore? Nope. I can't divide 5 and I can't divide 6 by the same number anymore. So that is the simplest form. Sometimes when I say the word reduce, I'm introducing that term and I maybe need to explain it. I mean, can it be divided anymore? What I'm doing is sometimes when you're in 4th grade, you're going to use that term a lot more. But in 3rd grade, we're just saying, can it be divided again? Okay. But when I say the word and I'm catching myself saying that, that's why I'm saying that. I am asking, can you divide it anymore? Okay. And now we have 6/10. What can both of these be divided by to give us the simplest form? Right? Both can be divided by 2 to give me 3/5. Okay. This has been a longer lesson because these are concepts that take a lot of attention. Let me go through your workbook exercise so that you know what to expect, and then I'm going to let you go. So you'll see, here we are dividing each one to give us simplest form, and then you're going to go simplest form here. You're going to write the simplest form for each fraction. Now, you're going to color in spaces of the fractions that are in simplest form. So you're going to have to go through each fraction and ask yourself, can it be divided anymore? And if it can be divided more, then it's not in simplest form. Remember, simplest form means it can't be divided anymore. So 4/12, yeah, that's not in simplest form. You have to not color that one in. But how about 1/2? 1/2 is simplest form. So go ahead and color that space in. And then, of course, we're going to work with those equivalent fractions again. And so you're working with some of these fractions, and you're actually going to go to simplest form. Okay? And as you do, you're going to go through a letter. Remember, students, please don't figure out the word is and then just quickly fill it in. Do the work. Do your math. And this is to help you understand if you understood how to do the work. Same thing's true in here. Don't color this in and then just not think. I want you to think and then see the patterns, okay? This is to serve as a way for you to check yourself, okay? So sorry that this was a longer lesson, but it was a lot to cover. Hope you're doing well. If you have any questions, ask mom or dad. And if they have any questions, you can definitely let me know. Thanks, students. Bye.